Let us look at the subtopic here, solving quadratic equations by completing the square. So we have a quadratic equations given, which is something like this, x squared minus 2x minus 5. So we have to learn completing the square. So in order to learn completing the square, so we have some basic concept here, as you can see at the key ideas over here. To solve quadratic equations of the form ax squared plus bx plus c equal to 0, for which you cannot factorize using integers. So this is the conditions. If you cannot factorize the quadratic equation, then completing the square is good to solve it. So you can see here, complete the square for the quadratic expressions and factorize if possible. So we do complete the square and we factorize afterwards. Okay, so this is one way to handle it, and we have other ways to handle it. We are not going to care about that first. So now let's look at more examples on the next page. So before we move on to the next page, let's look at this part here, building understanding. What number must be added to the following expressions to form a perfect square? So what is perfect square again? Let's do a quick revision. 1, 4, 9, 16, 36, 49, and so on. These are perfect square. Perfect square, we can change it to 1 square, 2 square, 3 square, 4 square. Okay, I left out 25, which is 5 square, 36, which is 6 square, and so on. So we can change it to an integer and square. So how about our situation here? We have x squared plus 2x. So what number should we add so that we can change it to a perfect square? So we have to add 1 for this case. This is the answer here. We have to add 1. So let's see what happens. If I add 1, right? So let's say, for example, x squared plus 2x plus 1, it become a perfect square because when you have this, you can change it to something square, which is x plus 1 square. So x plus 1 square. So how we get the x plus 1 square? Of course, you have to factorize it. Okay, you have to factorize it. You will be able to factorize it to two same factor, x plus 1, x plus 1. Okay, and after that, you will get these x plus 1 square. So now, how we know we have to add 1? Okay, how we know we have to add 1? So how? That is a way actually. So you can take the coefficients of the x term, which is 2 here. Okay, which is 2. You take these coefficients, you divide by 2. Okay, so after that, you square it. So you square it. So 2 over 2 is 1. When you square it, it is still 1. So you divide by 2 and you square it. The number that you get, you add it at the back and it becomes perfect square. So let's look at the next example in B. So you can see here we have x squared plus 20x. How are we going to change it to a perfect square? So the way is we look at the coefficients of the x term. It is 20. So you divide by 2 and you square it. Then you will get 10 square. then you get 100. So you just need to add 100. Okay, you add 100, then it becomes a perfect square. How? Let's see here. If I have x squared plus 20x plus 100, it becomes a perfect square because you can factorize it to the same factor, which is x plus 10 and x plus 10. So afterwards, it becomes x plus 10 squared. Okay, so now let's see here. Question 2a. Question 2a has been covered up, so I'm going to put the question here again. The question is in fact like this: x squared minus 3. X squared minus 3 equal to 0. So we are going to factorize it. So the formula that we are going to use here is a squared minus b squared equal to a plus b, a minus b. So we have to use this formula. So in order to do so, we have to change our expressions into x squared minus something square. And the way to do it is we put square root 3 or sub 3, then you square it again. Okay, so we have x squared minus sub 3 square. And we can factorize x plus sub 3, x minus sub 3 equal to 0. So that is how we factorize it for question A. So likewise, if you look at question B over here, question B, x squared minus 10 equal to 0. So what we're supposed to do is we change it to x squared minus square root 10 square. So with x squared and minus square root 10 square, then we can change it to x plus square root 10, x minus square root 10 equal to 0. That is how we factorize it. Now, how about C then? Okay, C is a bit special. So you have x plus 1 square minus 5. So the 5, you can change it to square root 5 and square again. So you have two square which minus each other. Then we can apply the formula as in here, which is a plus b. So our a for this case is x plus 1. And our b for this case is square root 5. So in order to use the formula, we have to bear in mind we are going to have a plus b, which is x plus 1, that is a, plus b, which is square root 5, and then a minus b equal to 0. So that is how we factorize the question in C. Okay, now question 3 is about how to solve the equations. So in order to solve the equations, so what happened is, you can see in part A, after you factorize, you let each x, let's say for example, in 3a, you factorize, or the factorized form is given. So you let each factor equal to 0. Then you make x the subject. That is how we solve it. So when I say we make x as the subject, that means we make x alone on one side. Then you get the x value, and that is how we solve it. So solve the equation means find the x values. Okay, so likewise in B, x minus sub 7, x plus sub 7 equal to 0. So you just let x minus sub 7 equal to 0, and you will end up with x equal to sub 7. You let x plus sub 7 equal to 0, and you will end up with x equal to minus 37. It is more or less the same like 3a. How about 3c? Let's take a look. 3c. So after you have these factors, okay, so you can see here you have the factors already. So you let each factors equal to 0. You let x minus 3 plus 5 equal to 0. Then you shift the numbers over to the right hand side. Then you will get 3 minus 5. This is the first answer. And now you look at the second factors given there. Then you let it equal to 0. And you shift minus 3 and minus 5 to the right. You get 3 plus 5. Okay, so that is for C. For D, it will be similar. So I leave it to you to find it out. Now let's see example 19. Example 19. Solving quadratic equation by completing the square. So solve this quadratic equation by first completing the square. Now you see our question in A, we have x squared minus 4x plus 2 equal to 0. So let's see the solution here. X squared minus 4x plus 2 equal to 0. They just write back the same questions. And now the first step to do here, the first step, so I label it as step 1. S1 means step 1. You have to look at the coefficients of x term, which is minus 4. So you take minus 4, you divide by 2 and you square it. So minus 4 divided by 2 is in fact minus 2. Minus 2, you square it, you end up with 4. So we need 4. We need 4 to make the quadratic a perfect square. So because of that, you look at the next line. We need 4 to make the quadratic a perfect square. So the next line you can see here, x squared minus 4x. Now they add 4. So they add 4. They add 4. Of course, adding 4 will change the questions. So in order to balance back, we minus 4. Okay, we minus 4. So we add 4 to make the first 3 terms as a perfect square. And after that, because of adding 4, you need to minus 4 again to balance off, okay, the values added. So you minus 4, and after that, plus 2 come from the last term of the previous equation. So we plus 4 and minus 4. So you had to do these steps. In general, what is this step? In general, if you have ax squared plus bx plus c equal to 0, you have to look at your b. You take b over 2 divide by b over 2, then you square. Okay, so if you get b squared over 4 at the end, then you have to add that to at the third positions, and then you minus that at the fourth positions to make the first 3 terms a perfect square. So now let's take a look for on the first 3 term where I call it perfect square. So let me zoom in a bit. Okay, so the first 3 term, like what I said, it is a perfect square. So the one in the red box is a perfect square. X squared minus 4x plus 4, which is a perfect square. So perfect square, you can see here, perfect square. Okay, let me call it step 2 here. Step 2, you add 4 and minus 4. Okay, now step 3, you have to deal with the perfect square now. So this perfect square, you can factorize it to 2 same factors. X squared minus 4x plus 2. We can factorize it to x minus 2, x minus 2. Factorize it to the same factors. It always happens. If you manage to do complete the square here, then you can get a perfect square, and you're always able to factorize it to the same factors, and hence you will get x minus 2 square. Okay, so of course, if you can't factorize it easily, there is a way to help you out. So to make it as a square, so you may think like this actually. You look at the first term, x squared, then it becomes x. And you look at the minus 4 here, you divide by 2, and you will get minus 2. So it always works. If you can't factorize it easily and you want to get this form, so just remember, take the first term, remove the square, then you get x. Take the coefficients of the x term, which is minus 4. Take the minus 4, you divide by 2, then you get minus 2, bracket and square. So that is how we change it to a square. Okay, so the first 3 terms, we have changed it to a square. And the last 2 terms, minus 4 plus 2, we can just press calculator. Minus 4 plus 2 is minus 2. So we have done. Okay, we have done complete the square when you reach here. Now, what to do next is they are using this formula, a squared minus b squared equal to a plus b, a minus b, to factorize this one. Okay, to factorize this one. So bear in mind that in order to use that formula, so we have to change this. Okay, so I'm trying to write out at the side here. We are going to change this to x minus 2 square minus square root 2 square. So we need 2 square minus each other, and then after that, based on the formula, you will get this. Okay, so you will get this, which is the a plus b, a minus b. Okay, it's based on that formula. And you let each factors equal to 0 now. This is the first factor, you let it equal to 0, you get your x. This is the second factors, you let it equal to 0, then you will get your x. So this is how we solve it. So if you are not going to use a squared minus b squared equal to a plus b, a minus b, if you find it confusing, then you can use alternate method here. Alternate method. So alternate method is once you have done, complete the square. So which is here, then you can go straight to the next steps. As you can see here, you bring minus 2 to the right, it becomes 2. You bring square to the right, it becomes plus minus square root. And after that, you bring minus 2 to the right, it becomes 2 plus minus square root 2. So that is, and these two are the answer. So the answer are 2 plus square root 2, 2 minus square root 2. Okay, so that is how we handle it. And now let's see another example. So this is the second example where you have x squared plus 6x minus 11 equal to 0. So the first steps to do this is you take the x term coefficient, which is 6, you divide by 2 and you square it. Okay, as you can see here, you divide by 2 and you square it, then you get 9. So 9 is the number that you have to add at the third position and the fourth position to make the first 3 terms a perfect square. So the first 3 terms are now perfect square. So this is step 2. You add 9, then you minus 9 just to balance off. And now the first 3 terms are known as perfect square. So perfect square, you can square root it to the same factors and then do it straight here. So remember the shortcut that I mentioned just now, x squared. So the x squared, okay, the x squared become x. The positive 6, you divide by 2, you get positive 3. So that is the shortcut to factorize it. If you can't think of factorizing it quickly, as in here, factorize it to the same factors. If you can't do it quickly, so you may consider remembering the the way. So remove the square, you get x, minus divide by 2 for this value, minus 4 divided by 2, you get minus 2. Okay, so it works also. So as in here, x squared, you remove the square, you get x. Positive 6, you divide by 2, you get positive 3. Put them in bracket and square. So that is how we change it to a square. And now for the last two terms, we press calculator. Minus 9 minus 11 is minus 20. Okay, so once you get this form, then again, what we do is we use this formula. A square minus b square equal to a plus b, a minus b. So we change it to square. So we already have x plus 3 square. So for the 20, we change it to square root 20 and square. So we have square that minus each other. And after that, you can change it to a plus b, a minus, you see minus minus become plus already, huh? So a minus b. So this is a plus b, a minus b. So where we apply this formula. Okay, so what to do next? They change the square root 20 to 2 third 5. You can use calculator to do so. Or if you want to know how, you can check the site here. This is how they change it. And now they apply the now factor law. Now factor law is where you take the factor equal to 0, then you find your x. So likewise here, you take the second factors equal to 0, then you find your x, and these are the answer. Okay, so settle for this page. So on the last page, we still have a few more examples. So let's take a look here. The question here, which has been covered up, so it's actually x squared minus 3x plus 1. So what to do is, you take the minus 3, you divide by 2 and you square it, so you get 9 over 4. So the first term you write back, the second term you write back, then you have to add 9 over 4 and minus 9 over 4 to the previous equation, followed by plus 1. I left out equal to 0. Okay, so now the first three terms are known as perfect square. So we can just factorize it. Like what I mentioned just now, the easiest way to factorize it is the x squared, you change it to x. The minus 3, you divide by 2, you get minus 3 over 2. So you can get x minus 3 over 2 square. For the last two terms, we can just press calculator for this case, and you will get minus 5 over 4. So we have done completing the square here, and now we apply a squared minus b squared equal to a plus b, a minus b, and we get, okay, let us do it here. We have x minus 3 over 2 square minus square root 5 over 4 square equal to 0. So after doing so, we get square that minus each other, and we can do a plus this one, and then a minus negative of this. Because of that negative, it end up with plus, minus minus end up with plus, equal to 0. And after that, you let each factor equal to 0. As you can see the working here, so you let each factor equal to 0, and then you get your x, and then settle. So we have a few questions to try it out here, so you can just try it on your own. Answer is given here. Okay, so that's all for this complete the square.